All right, hello, folks, and if you're watching the stream, excuse me, happy Friday. Thank you for joining for another episode of the Kstream Podcast. This is episode 14, the third we're recording this week. So having a lot of fun with the guests this week, and excited to talk to a gentleman who's been in the broadcasting production industry for 20 plus years now. He runs a production company out of Texas and has been, since COVID has rocked the world, has done a ton of work in the remote production, virtual event production space. So talking to Anthony Barocas today. Anthony, thank you for jumping on with me.
Not a problem. I
So
appreciate you having me.
yeah, absolutely. And so first, just kind of give us an idea. We were talking a little bit about it before we went live, but tell us a little bit about who you are and what takes up most of your time these days.
Okay, I'm part-time dad. So especially with COVID and the kids at home, everybody around the world is dealing with the same exact thing. So it's like, you're all of a sudden the parent part of your life is much bigger than it was when the kids went off to school all day. Um, so, I'm no different than any other dad or mom, anywhere else. But it's part of the balance, it's that life work balance that we all, like on a day-to-day basis, or like making things fit. Um, I have a company called AIBA Communications, and I've had that since college. And don't go looking it up as to when that was. But then years ago, I've done multi-camera live switch to tape for years, in all sorts of companies around the world even. And just lately it's been, was of like the past 10 years, live multi-camera live switch, and then we use streaming platforms. And then it became easier to go to YouTube and Facebook, and then it's like, oh man, you just need an RTMP and you can push it anywhere, and it's super easy. And we were gearing up for this, some local partners of mine, we were gearing up for this huge, going to be national monthly Spartan type fitness competition, and we were boxing thing up in Pelican cases and racking them up, and then COVID hit and nothing happened. Like nothing. I was like,
Oh,
and like everyone else in the industry, we were just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I was like, well, let me look into what I could do remote wise, because if I'm having this issue, but it's like all the people that I was working with were also kind of stuck in the same predicament, in that they had events that they had scheduled that they had to postpone, and then cancel. And they still wanted to have something. And, with everything going remote, I, like, 80% of the industry, I would say, and the other part of the industry went into like other parts. It's like, well, we used to do like set design, but now we're going to do it in virtual sets, things like
yeah.
that. We went into remote production, which is like, how can I get a remote guest who's there into my setup for an audience that's over there? And that has been like a huge piece of my work for, was it February now, like almost a year. And started out for the local arts organization. They wanted to have a virtual open mic night, and then we did their normal monthly meetings turned into bi-weekly remote talk shows, and that led to producing articles, and the articles got in front of a people, and then they say, oh, let me, and when everything leads to something else. And now I'm working with a lot of companies, and things have started to go what I call hybrid, whereby I might be on site for the MC, or two people who are in a studio, but then there's a great portion of people who are remoting in as well. So it's hybrid. It's not all remote. It's not all local. It's both pieces in one. And I've had to like find new resources to make things work on an almost weekly basis. It's like, oh my goodness, we want to have 4-5 people, but we want to record ISOs of all of them while we can see them and talk to them. And they're like, yeah, nothing I have does that. What do I need to use now? So
So
it's
you've
it's
had to
been
learn over the course of the year, um, So remote production wasn't necessarily a big part, if at all, of your business before. So over the last year, you're just, yeah, I'm sure like you have gone through so many new softwares and programs to kind of figure out, just kind of like I guess everybody else is doing. We were figuring this thing out as we went. You've I'm sure you've gone through countless softwares and things like that.
Yeah, it's like I had Restream for restreaming, but then Restream has that Restream Studio, which is that switching thing in the cloud, and then which is a lot like StreamYard, which is what we're using for this show.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other platforms that now do that as well. But then the recording thing was like, well, nobody actually does ISOs of each remote caller. And then I find this Riverside FM, odd name, but Riverside FM, and this one does ISOs of all the remote callers. Okay, this is great, and so we've used that on a couple projects to get recordings, and then picking up, there's like vMix and Wirecast and OBS Studio and all those tools for bringing people into your computer here if you've got the bandwidth. But if you don't have the bandwidth, then using a cloud solution like StreamYard or Restream is a great tool. And now ShowFlow is now jumping into this part of the market as well. ShowFlow used to be just like run of show things, but it's a live document that automatically updates. So it's like multiple people in multiple departments can look at something, and if something, oh, this person's not here, the whole show just collapses, and now everybody's time is updated. It's a great tool, but now ShowFlow is also in the cloud multi-camera live production space as well. So, and they just sent me an update yesterday on new pricing. So when I last talked to them, it was like, yes, it's going to be $1,500 a year. And now they sent a thing saying, hey, you could do it monthly for $59. And wow. I'm like, whoa, okay. So that's a whole big different thing. And, it's always trying to find tools that work, because like, vMix tops out at 8 remote callers. And that's if you've got a lot of bandwidth coming into your studio and you've got a great machine. StreamYard will do, 10, right?
Yep.
But if you're the host, then it's 9. And then if you have a client who wants to watch, it's 8. And you just keep chipping away at things, and it's just. So it's finding ways to handle more people, because I did an event where they said, well, we have 9, and it has to be in 9. I was like, I only got 8 in vMix, so we're going to do it in StreamYard, and then all of a sudden it became 10. Well, I need to be in the room, so you can't have 10 of you if I'm in the room. So we had to bring one of them into the studio, so they were local to me and not remote. And it was just finding ways to like strike that balance. But then ShowFlow comes in and says, listen, you have 10 plus a producer and up to 25 backstage, so you can have 25 people connect. I'm like, dude, that's like a whole, like if I need to have like, okay, and then the next person, and then the next person, and then the next person, and the next person, that's like a really slick little feature. So
and what about like, communicating with them too? That's a key piece, right? Like being able to communicate with guests while they're not live necessarily, right? Like a quote unquote green room type thing.
Yeah, and that's really the challenge that a lot of these tools have. I mean, vMix is great, and I think it has literally exploded in the past year since COVID hit, because it has those 8 channels built in with mix minus, and then you can do audio bus routing and have them all in a green room talking to themselves, and then bringing them onto the show, and you can talk into the green room and talk into their ears. And I've got my thing set up so I've got a button for each caller, and I can literally talk into the ears of one person. So the host asks a question to the guest, and while the guest is answering, I can tell the host, you've got 5 minutes left. Nobody hears it. It's not part of the show. He hears it, and he gives it that subtle little, and I know he's nodding to me, not to the, not to the guest.
Yes.
So there's that. And like ShowFlow really makes that part of their thing too, because they are more of a professional production tool. They have like both the show panel and a preview panel, so you can provide information to them on the preview panel that's not part of the show. So they're looking at that from a production standpoint, whereas a product like StreamYard is beautifully built for something that we're doing here, where the host is part of the show, So there's really not a need for too much backstage. But I've used a tool like this for actual production, like remote records. But what we did was we had everybody lined up who was, a stakeholder in it, and we brought each person on screen. We had them do their thing or redo part of what they needed to do, and then okay, thank you, and next person, bring them on. So we're doing these remote records, but everybody who's a guest in it is able to watch it. But the key is, unlike a business chat app like WebEx or Zoom, StreamYard allows you to, like, you can pay for a 1080 tier, so you're getting a 1080 recording. So that's one of the benefits of, yes, I'm still doing it in the cloud, so I don't have to have a massive PC on my end. I've got 7 people connected, and I'm getting a 1080 record from each person in turn, or I can put 4 up. So that really worked out really well in terms of leveraging StreamYard, or I don't mean to knock Restream, but Restream has a similar capability as well.
And talk about that for a minute. We mentioned a lot of cloud-based and software. Talk a little bit about just the differences. Why might somebody go with a cloud-based solution versus something that's maybe software-based or hardware-based?
Okay, well, the cloud-based means different things to different people, I think. and cloud-based, to me, like vMix is an app. I don't mean to keep promoting vMix. I'll say Wirecast. Wirecast is an app. Boinks, Mimo Live is an app. Pick whatever you want. All these things are apps, and they have to run on a machine that's local to you, but they don't actually have to. They could be put on like an Amazon server or a Paperspace server in the cloud and run there. And whether you run it on your computer or someone else's computer, there's a couple reasons. Like, well, if I'm working from a home office and my internet connectivity is not going to have the bandwidth, the reliable bandwidth, because most home internet, if you don't have like a business internet that guarantees a minimum, your quality fluctuates. And if you can't guarantee it, then pulling it into your system and saying, I want to have 8 people come into me, and then I'm going to send them 8 return feeds, as well as the stream and the record, you're asking a lot of a machine. So you need a very powerful machine, which can get pretty expensive. And then you're going to need a lot of reliable bandwidth. And in Texas, stupid things happen because of politics, and, things are not as reliable as they should be. And so putting it in the cloud allows you to say, well, now I'm just looking at the screen of something that's happening on a really powerful machine somewhere else that has unlimited bandwidth. Almost, you can't really get to the limits of the bandwidth. And, depending upon the processing power, like you don't even know what the processing power of what is needed to run StreamYard, because it's not a question, and with Amazon, or if you're going to build your own cloud server for whatever app you choose to run, you can put it in the cloud, and then you just build enough, you package in enough resources, so I want a 4-core processor, I want an 8-core processor, I need this level of graphics processing capability, I need this much bandwidth, I need this big of a hard drive. So you package it out and you build it. But still, it's like on one project I'm working on, it's like we've got a decent little machine, it's running vMix, it's doing a good job with a couple connections, unlimited bandwidth, and I think it's 70 cents an hour. I'm like, this is stupid cheap.
Yes.
Well, but if you have bandwidth issues or you have budget issues, so you have that level of server, you have that level of capability, and that low cost. It's like, it takes time, and time is money to get it set up, to get it to where you need it to be properly outfitted and all this stuff, and then get your controls so you can properly interface with that remote thing. But you can do it with a lightweight laptop. You could do it with a lightweight desktop. You don't need a great powerful gaming machine with a huge graphics card in order to have somebody else's machine do all the hard work.
Yeah, and you're also considering just kind of the type of work or the type of event, quote unquote, that you're doing. Like you said, for something like this, where I'm just, I'm talking to one person and I'm part of the broadcast, and I want to get it up on social channels, something like a cloud-based or browser-based solution like StreamYard is perfect. And you kind of, I want to talk about just an event that you actually wrote about recently. I know you do some work for the streaming media publication, and I saw an article where you kind of laid out your kind of thinking and decision-making process behind how you went about eventually, purchasing and using a software for, was it a Habitat for Humanity event?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
talk a little bit about, what the event was, kind of what your, the problems that you were kind of facing, and or the questions that you were facing, and how you ultimately kind of got to your decision.
Well, I was brought on for this summit that they were going to put on. And, it's like any corporate, quarterly meeting or leadership event or anything like that. So they're all kind of, especially with remotes. And this one was going to have a lot of remotes. But the key thing is they were going to have a panel event after a panel event. I mean, literally, like, the panel event would have 5 people in it. And then, okay, thank you. And next, we're going to have this panel event. And part of doing remotes is you need to onboard the next panel event while you're in a panel event. And so we got to the point where, like I said, vMix has 8, and I could bring 8 in, and I could do 8, and I could send 8 out. That's not the problem. The problem is having 5, and then 1 holdover, and then 4 more. That's more than 8. I can't do 2 panel events in succession like that. I could do 1, but the fact that there was no break between them where I could do the onboarding for the next one in between, because literally it was like a 2-sentence transition between this panel event and the next panel event.
Wow.
So if I'm getting the next ones on 10 minutes early so I can make sure they're all there. Hey, I see you. You look good, sound good. Tilt your camera down, okay, make sure you can hear me. Turn off the, air conditioner, tell the guy to stop mowing, things like that. I decided, listen, there's not enough time and there's not enough resources with vMix. And even though StreamYard does not have the back channel communication, you can text chat and it's always on the screen there. So it's not like it's hidden in a bubble somewhere or hidden in another pane. I said, listen, we'd be much better off doing this in the cloud using StreamYard because of the literally cascading panels. There just aren't enough resources and capability in a hardware-based system like vMix. Now, you could take 2 vMixes, but then you need 2 operators, 1 to onboard and 1 to run a show, and then you ping pong between the 2 vMixes. So you got 2 operators, 2 systems, and you've just kind of doubled your production cost, which didn't fit in the budget. So it was getting it to fit in their budget while also handling the creep of people, because then it was like, and we want to have this other person on to introduce the panel. So wait, they're only going to be on for like 2 minutes. Can we record that, make that a video? Because then that would reduce the number of people and we could get it to fit. No, we want them live. Okay. So, there's some of the constraints of what the client wants to do and how we can facilitate that within budget and still have, it's like, it's not going to look as pretty as, and I'm not going to have as detailed capability of how the frames are going to look as I would with vMix or Wirecast or any, really detailed production tool. But Wirecast or Restream or any of the cloud things allow you the capability to handle these large groups of people. Now, I haven't delved into ShowFlow, but ShowFlow is supposed to have a really robust backroom, where a director can talk to people. And honestly, it's not limited to these things. There are numerous capabilities, solutions out there. There's Neural Net, which is a great system, but it's a higher end broadcast system that's designed so that you can bring in 20, 30 people into a back room and then connect them to a production system over NDI. So you get really high quality as well as back channel communication, mix minus and all this stuff. And now there's OBS Ninja. I just throwing this out there for people who are like, what else, can I do?
Yeah.
OBS Ninja is sort of like a structureless thing. And it's like, you kind of make it do what you wanted to do. The person who built this just sort of like built the construct, but he didn't say, and this is a room and this is, like you just make a room and then the room has certain features. Like I could still get an individual feed from everybody in the room, but then I can feed my show program into the room so everybody in the room can see it. So that's my return. And then there's also, if you're in the control panel for OBS Ninja, you've got a direct talk back to each person that's not part of the show. I mean, like, this is pretty capable. I haven't really delved into it because it really is like, you have to like put the pieces together yourself and to make it work. It's not a pre-built solution like StreamYard or vMix.
Mm-hmm. Man, as somebody who owns a production company, do you buy these softwares just kind of like based on client needs, or do you get them just like, do you have all of these I would imagine managing all of these all of these subscriptions gets to be a little bit of a headache, but maybe, there's probably, I'm sure somebody that's been doing this a long time, there's an easier way to go about it, or maybe not.
Well, thankfully, I mean, it's like, I at one point it's like I owned Restream and StreamYard and Zoom, high-end Zoom license, and it's like you start adding things, and then it was like, listen, most of these things are available monthly,
Yep.
and it's part of, it's like, well, you're going to pay for this or bandwidth or something, and it's just part of the production cost. So at this point, I've signed off of most. I don't have a yearly contract to anything, not anything. I have a yearly contracts to things, but
Sure.
what I do is just like, when I have a client that needs StreamYard, I pay the $15 or $19 for that month. I mean, $19 to be able to have a whole
I
month
know. I
of
know.
full 1080 recording. I'm like, that's nothing. That's
Yeah.
like what a cassette tape used to cost. Just like, oh, well, this client's coming, we need to buy a few cassettes. Well, the cassette was $23.
And it allows you time to, I mean, you buy something for a month, you also have plenty of time to test it, theoretically.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of these things have free tiers where you can go in there and play around. And it doesn't give you
Yeah.
all the capabilities, but if you're just trying to see what the interface is like and things like that, going in at a free tier is a great way to do it. It's just at this point, there's so many cascading projects. Then, the interesting thing with live production is, oh, this production is only 2 days. You get the rest of the time. Well, no, because all the other days are taken up with the pre-production for the production, and the remote tests, and
Yes.
let's build the suite and everything. So, we started to get into like prepackaged online platforms like Hopin, like AirMeet,
Yeah.
and other things, which they can do multi-camera live switching sort of in their platform, but then they also offer registration, management, commenting, questions, polling, reactions. AirMeet has this big lobby where people can sit down at tables and then strike up miniature little video conversations at the table, which is pretty slick. And then they've got an arena where you can like dedicate something to particular like clients or sponsors. So, I want to go to the Sony section. You go to the Sony section, you can sit down at the table with Sony representatives and talk about things. So it's like a conference type of thing, where you really, the mentality of those platforms is very similar to actually attending, like I'm going to a hotel and there's the conference and here's session A, B, C, D. And outside there's a lobby where people can mill around, sit at a table, talk with people and network. And then there's booths and an exhibit area. So they're really echoing that real world situation in a virtual environment. And there's a lot to it in terms of understanding what can and can't be done. Like one of the limitations is, as a producer in AirMeet, I can't be the host or producer of more than one session at a time, which as a producer doesn't make sense. It's sort of like, once I get the speaker on stage, I need to leave this room, go to the next room, make sure this is going good, leave this room, because that's what a producer would do. That's what the host would do. But AirMeet is sort of like, if you're the host of this session, you can't leave this session without closing it, and you can't go into any other session while the session's active. I'm like, no, you guys got to rethink that.
Yeah.
Because again, they're thinking in terms of like the speaker is the host, and that's not something that really exists. The speaker I'm just here to speak. I'm not running the show. I don't want to know anything about the backstage. I don't want to know anything about how all this works. I just want to be like brought on stage. Hi, welcome, blah 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 blah. Thank you very much, and leave.
Yes.
Just like a real event.
Yep.
So these platforms, and like I said, I haven't checked out ShowFlow, but these platforms are not designed to have behind the scenes producers with this really weird control of everything, but not be seen at all.
And you've mentioned you're starting to do some more hybrid events. I mean, do you think moving forward we'll see softwares like some of the ones you mentioned, Hopin and things along those lines, AirMeet, integrated somehow into in person or, events like you said that are hybrid that have some kind of an in-person aspect as well as a virtual aspect?
Absolutely. I think going forward, I think people are going to realize that, and it works both ways. People are going to, event organizers, companies are going to realize like, hey, just as an aside, think of before COVID, how many companies like, no, we can't do remote. Everybody has to be in the office. And then they were forced to be remote. And then we're like, so why do we have all this office space? Do we really need to do all this? We got 7 floors in this building and we're doing just fine with less than one. So,
yeah.
and it's like, I know my wife is like, say, hey, listen, if I don't have to go into the office 5 days a week ever again, I'm fine with that. And I know a lot of people are echoing that because, the like I said, the work personal life balance is very different when you're at home and able to take care of things and still get work done. But that said, I think to your question, I think people have had their eyes opened, maybe against some of their will, that all of the audience doesn't have to be there. You can reach a much larger audience if you have a speaker on a real stage with a real audience, but you also make that available online, live, even if it's paid or unpaid or whatever, but have a platform that's tied to this real event, so it's in both places at once. Similarly, I've had speakers contact me saying, listen, I've been asked to speak at an event, but I'm not going to get on a plane and travel. How can we do this remote? So there's, you can have a live event where the speaker is on stage, but they're actually still remote, but it's still, they are being piped into this room and they can see this room and they're interacting with this room, but then they're also in the virtual room. So speakers can be remote, audiences can be remote, in addition to the speakers and audience that are local. There's 4 components now, as opposed to it just being local or just being remote.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, a virtual event in December that I helped produce. It was a yearly event that was traditionally all in person, like most of the ones you mentioned, and spoke to a couple folks after the event as far as, got some feedback. And, a couple people were very much surprised at how they were still able to feel like they were able to network with other, a lot of people go to in-person events to network and not just watch the event, but they want to meet people in the industry and learn. And they still felt like they were able to get that connection in a virtual environment. And you're mentioning stuff like this Air Meet, where, people can still like sit in these waiting rooms and network, and that I can picture being integrated somehow into a hybrid event. So such just interesting possibilities.
Yeah, I think our eyes have been opened to the fact that it's not a here nor there exclusivity.
Yeah. Exactly. And so just a couple more things, Anthony. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've also seen you, with this all remote event streaming world. How can people, we obviously we get a lot of guests that are in their homes, and not familiar with remote productions or doing things in that way. They're used to showing up at an event dressed up and they go on a stage that's already set for them. What are some things that you can tell people to kind of, I don't know if easily is the right word, but a couple of like quick fixes or kind of certain things you're always thinking about to help make a remote event look more professional?
Well, I'm doing a couple of them right here. Okay, not these headphones, but I couldn't find my black earbuds. But if you have earbuds, or tell the guest to get a pair of earbuds and they can put them behind their head like this, it's very discreet. This is something, we have portable kits now that we send out for higher quality where we can control it. And included in the kit is a pair of black earbuds, and they go behind the ears and they're cinched back so you don't see the earbuds. And it's just like I'm talking to you without honking big headsets or a big boom microphone or dangly white, okay, these are not iPod headphones because there's no microphone. You know how hard it is to find a pair of headphones that don't have a microphone in them these days?
I can imagine.
But anyway, so I'm going to do a shameless plug if I can. Am I allowed to do that?
Please.
Okay. So if you go to if you go to this website, Stream for Us, there's a page called um, what is that page called? How to Look Awesome. I'm looking at it now. And on that page, can I share my page? Is that allowed?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Share screen. Yeah. Share screen. Set window or screen. Good. It lets me do that. I think that's this one. Yep. Allow. Okay.
There it is. I'll add it.
And
Let's see. Here we go.
so right over here on the right-hand side, you've got How to Look Awesome. And then on this page, there's like, make sure you look awesome. So you click on this and it'll tell you like dress well, elevate your camera to eye level like I did here, because it's like if it's looking up at you, it looks and feels like it's a laptop camera. Prepare your presentation so you are prepared, just like you would if you were going on stage. Let me run through my notes. Let me have put it up in front of me. You don't want people constantly going and on the thing. And they're looking off at their PowerPoint off to the side. Pick a good location. That's a key thing too, because you want to have a quiet place. You want to have a place where what we see behind you is either not distracting or it's relevant. And this is, if anybody's seen my tech videos on YouTube, that's the Aibacom channel. This is the same background, so it's all about lenses and gear and stuff like that. So this is my tech channel background, which is relevant to streaming. But if you're a sports fan or something like that, have a helmet or some awards behind you, or you're talking about fitness. You have some fitness stuff. Do you have headphones? That is absolutely, I think, the best number one thing. Because when you have headphones on, the show audio does not go into the microphone, and the microphone only picks up your voice. That's a key thing. And then having is your internet awesome? Well, there's not a lot you can do about that. And then I have specific recommendations for connecting in vMix and StreamYard, because that's what people would be connecting to me in. And then I also talk about using a microphone, stop screen. And I'm using the microphone in the webcam, but location is another key factor. Having a room that's quiet. So if you have a office with a wood floor and it's square with hard walls and a hard ceiling, it's going to sound like a box.
Yeah.
But and technically that's what I have here in this room, except because it's also since COVID, it has become my production studio. I put down some carpet and I put some sound tiles up above me to help suck up some of that reverb so it doesn't sound so echoey. But in a house, if you have a room with some carpeting, you have some cloth furniture, usually bedrooms work really well. And I know nobody wants to actually be doing lives from their bedroom, but you take the camera and you aim it away from your bedroom towards a wall so that you're appearing in a nondescript background with a clean background behind you, and it's quiet, and you can close the door so that pets and deliveries and things like that, because Amazon comes, drops off something at the door, and the dog goes nuts, and things like that. Well, that's downstairs or in another part of the house, and you're able to be where in a live show. And like I said, if you dress up nice, and here's an interesting thing. I've got it set up on a standing table here, and when you stand, I think this sort of looks very different than when you're sitting and you're stopped. So you have guests to, look at a camera that's eye level. I'm talking to you, and we've done award shows where people dressed up in tuxes and everything, and they were still at home, but they picked a plain wall. They're dressed in a tux. It's part of a show, and you know what? It worked because it looked like the guest who was on was there for an award show, and that's what really makes it. The effort you put into it is the effort that comes out of it.
Anything, and it just made me think of another piece to events, and that's flow. And I guess a lot of how you kind of handle the flow of an event is based on the solution that you pick and its capabilities. But it's interesting. I was talking to a gentleman who's he was a middle school teacher in Austin, Texas, and he was telling me, so he was in the midst of online learning and Zoom classes and everything, and he previously, he had been into like streaming tech and video tech. He had a YouTube channel, whatnot, and he said the biggest one of the pieces of equipment that's been the most key to helping at least the flow of his classes has been the Stream Deck from Elgato, something like that, where he can if he's transitioning from one thing to another. Of course, maybe it's different with kids because kids in middle school, especially if you're spending more than 30 seconds of silence and you're online. I mean, Facebook and Twitter probably look a lot more appealing, but something like that has helped him with the flow and just kind of keeping things moving. Has that been an element to some of the remote production you've done, or is it really just about, kind of, we already talked about some of this, the softwares and the cloud-based solutions that you choose?
Well, most of my work is corporate. So I'm not most of my work is not public audience work. So I can definitely see, because when I watch videos that my daughter watches on things, even if they're, obviously live produced, I mean, they're constantly cutting between things, a close-up, a wide shot, a funny thing, a clip, things are shifting left and right. And there's a much faster visual pace than for corporate work, which is like I'm talking to you, I'm delivering this thing, and it's on this shot for like a good minute, which would kill something if you're trying to reach a 13-year-old. I'm just being honest. I do use a Stream Deck. I have, the show I just finished yesterday, I had my keyboard and I had two Stream Decks in front of me. So I had one Stream Deck for the call ISOs and I had one Stream Deck for the show. And, we had like a couple call-ins for the thing. And a Stream Deck makes it easy to access things. I mean, I also have on my laptop in front of me, I've got, the keyboard relabeled with a labeler for my vMix show, just because my Stream Deck wasn't big enough. And I'm like, well, heck, I got this big old keyboard in front of me. I'm just going to relabel the keys. And, so it can be anything you want. You can get little USB sticks with just a row of buttons and, and just making it comfortable for you. But I think the pace of a show is appropriate to the audience of the show. And, I definitely think having a good flow, and part of a good flow, just touching on another recommendation is, on shows that I've had that didn't go well, the problems have been that everything was last minute. Artwork wasn't coming in until the day before that day. We like one show I did, it was sort of like, well, I kept asking, well, where are the lower thirds coming from? Are you doing the lower thirds? Do you want us to do the lower thirds? The night before the show, I still didn't have an answer. So I told, the second producer, I said, listen, make all the lower thirds, because we're not getting them, we're not getting an answer. And that production time could have been better spent doing something else. And then the other thing that really helps a good flow is rehearsal. Yeah. The show that didn't go well, we didn't have a rehearsal. We basically had a tech check crammed into the back end of setup day, which should have been separate anyway. And because we were still working out technical issues, and then we did a couple of tech checks, and then the following morning, 8 a.m., boom, we're in show. Yeah. And literally, there was no time to walk through how does this person introduce the remote person? How does the remote person come back to the stage? How does, and it did not go as smoothly as it could have. And the easiest thing to make that work is having a rehearsal, even if you don't play the videos in full, even if you're not doing the whole prompter thing in full. But just having the time to say, okay, Tom, now we're going to talk to, we're going to introduce Mary. So, well, how do I do that? What should I say? That's what we're here to figure out. So having that worked out in advance, and then Mary knows, okay, thanks, John. Hey, today we're going to talk about this. And now let me introduce this video. Boom. And that flow comes from rehearsing this. So as much as people think, oh, yeah, we'll just go online, it's just like Zoom. It's not just like Zoom. This is television.
Yes. Well, thanks so much, Anthony, for the time. Where can people learn more about you or find your work? Let us know where we can find you.
Well, I would say my company Stream for Us, but also Streaming Media Magazine at streamingmedia.com. And then you click on the producer. I'm one of the writers there, contributing editor. And so there's a lot of articles about remote production, live production, cameras, gear. I'm a gearhead. You can see that behind me. And then I also have a tech channel on YouTube called AIBA Tech Thoughts, or you can just go to AIBA.com. Just search for that on YouTube and it'll show up. And that's basically the three outlets people can find me.
Perfect. And I'll put some of that in the show notes and the comments for some of these social videos. Anthony, I know I've learned a lot today. I'm taking notes on all of the softwares and names that you dropped during the show. So I'm excited to maybe get to some testing. Thank you so much, and best of luck moving forward.
Well, thank you, and I hope some of this stuff has been useful to people. People say, "Man, how do you know so much?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm still learning too, because there's always somebody else that knows more about a particular thing."
That's what I've found in just doing this podcast. If anything, if nobody's watching it, that's okay, because I feel like personally I am learning a ton, and it has been a pleasure.
Well, it's been a pleasure to be on here. Thank you very much.
All right.